We will call to order the Housing and Human Services Commission meeting for September 23rd at 7:03. Just before starting, we have a new commissioner. I would like to welcome Franklin Lowe. Welcome. Thank you for joining.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Like in the longest time now, we have the full set of commissioners, right?
Nice.
Yes.
Welcome. All right. So before we go further, I think we've done this once before, but I would like to go over some of the housekeeping things, especially now that we're doing the teleconference meetings. So just like some reminders, I know we have done it, but just so we have. So during the meetings, again, request that everybody keep their microphone muted. And if you need to participate, please use the raise your hand in the Zoom meeting. That will help us recognize, and then we'll try to go in the order of what we notice the hands going up, and we will call. And Edith will do the voiceover depending on the order of the things that are coming up. Again, this particular commission, Housing and Human Services meeting, is being conducted utilizing teleconference and electronic means consistent with California Executive Order N2920 passed for COVID-19 pandemic. Members of the public may provide audio public commentary by connecting to teleconference meeting online or by telephone. Again, please use raise hand feature if you're on a desktop computer, or *9 on the telephone. Again, teleconference meetings are available on the Human Services meeting agenda. Comments on matters not on the agenda must be submitted prior to the time the meeting is called, and calls for the items oral communication. Comments on agenda items must be submitted prior to the time chair closes the public hearing for the agenda. Speakers are requested to keep their comments no more than 3 minutes, and the time limits will be enforced. Guidelines are posted on the Housing and Human Services Commission. So with that, can we get the roll call, please?
Sure thing. Thank you. Chair Hiermeth.
Present.
Vice Chair Stetson. If you can unmute yourself.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilbert.
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Quoke. Okay. Commissioner Lowe.
Present. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. Commissioner Sell.
Present.
And Commissioner White.
Present.
Thank you. All right.
Thank you. With that, we move on to oral communications. Again, a reminder to the public to raise your hands, or please use *9 if you wish to address. Staff, do we have any speaker cards?
We do have an attendee, but I don't believe she wishes to speak on oral communications. Thank you.
Moving on to the consent calendar. Is my agenda back? All right. The first item is number, yes, it's for 2020-0846, approval of the meeting minutes for August 26th. Do we have a motion?
I move to accept the minutes as written.
All right, we have a second.
I second.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we are ready for moving on to the public hearing section.
Actually, Chair, we need to have a vote, please.
What's that, sorry?
We need, hold on a quick second. We need to have a roll call vote for
Oh.
the approval of the consent
Oh,
calendar.
Okay, sorry. Yeah.
That's quite all right. Okay, Commissioner Sell,
Yes. Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Lowe,
Yes. Aye.
thank you. Commissioner Gilbert,
Yes.
Vice Chair Stetson,
Yes.
Commissioner White,
Yes.
and Chair Hiremath.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I guess it passes unanimously. Okay, public hearing section, item 0821. This is for review of the 2019-20 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or popularly known as CAPER. Do we have any public hearing comments?
We have a staff report first.
We do. We have a staff report, and then we'll open it up for public comments after. So for this item, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Leif Christensen, our Housing Programs Analyst.
Thank you, Jenny. Good evening, everyone. My name is Leif Christensen. I'm the Housing Programs Analyst here at the City of Sunnyvale. It's good to see everyone virtually. I wish we were able to all be in one room, but given the circumstances, we're doing the best we can. So it's really good to see everyone and be back in action. The topic of this item is the Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, better known as the CAPER. And the CAPER is the annual performance report for the 2 federal grants the city receives each year, which is our Home Investment Partnership Grant and Community Development Block Grant, or what we call Cdbg grant. Each year we receive about $1.2 million in Cdbg funds and about $400,000 in home funds. The fiscal year 1920 CAPER covers the period of July 1st, 2019, excuse me, to June 30th, 2020. It also marks the 5th and final year of the city's 2015 to 2020 Consolidated Plan, and all the projects described in the CAPERs during that time period align with the Consolidated Plan goals referenced in the staff report. So each time we do a 5-year strategic plan, or what we call the Consolidated or Con Plan, there are goals put into the plan that we have to align our federal spending with. The CAPER is required by the Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, and they are the funder to us. So they essentially grant us the money, and then we grant it out to community-based organizations, developers, to help us spend that money. The CAPER's purpose is not only to track performance, but to confirm that the city is allocating the federal resources to eligible activities, meaning activities that must primarily benefit low-income residents and communities, and for what they call eligible activities. So the money that's allocated to individuals in the communities have to be eligible activities. Some examples of Cdbg eligible activities include housing rehabilitation, our human services grants, which are really around counseling, basic needs, and then like our economic development program, which is the Work First program that we funded for some years now. Some examples of home eligible activities or Home Investment Partnership Fund eligible activities are new construction, and then our tenant-based rental assistance program, which we'll talk about a little bit later and is incorporated into the CAPER. In addition to the CAPER, we have other federal reporting requirements. That includes the 5-year consolidated plan that I referenced a little bit earlier, and that really establishes our annual goals and objectives and really says how those federal dollars are going to be spent over the next 5 years. When we do our consolidated plan, it is in collaboration with the county and the other jurisdictions and cities within Santa Clara County. Then there's the annual action plan, the city's grant application that we do each year, which is telling HUD how we would like to spend the money. The commission plays a big role in that process each year, and later on this year we'll actually get right into the action plan and we'll go into more detail, and we appreciate the community and commission's input in that process year after year. Back to the CAPER, some accomplishments from program year 1920 that were highlighted in the staff report but I would like to mention now our TBRA program. TBRA stands for Tenant-Based Rental Assistance. We use our home funds for that, and we were actually able to enroll more households, spend more money on rental assistance, and it's really a collaborative effort. So the city is the funder, but we have several organizations that play a role. One of them is Abode Services. They pay the rental subsidy to the landlords. Then we have Sunnyvale Community Services and Downtown Streets team, who each client or household, because there could be multiple people in a household, are enrolled in supportive services to support them through whatever needs they have in terms of achieving self-sufficiency or getting linkages to services. It's important to note that the TBRA subsidy has a maximum term of 2 years. So that's why we like to combine a rental assistance with the supportive services, because after the 2 years, the household is expected to be able to carry on, the contract rent. Additionally, we received about $1 million in program income, which is a lot. And with the commission and community support, we were able to turn that around and help Sunnyvale Community Services acquire a new facility off of Kern Avenue, which is a much larger facility. They haven't moved in yet, but I think there'll be more movement on that next calendar year, and they'll be able to serve a lot more people more effectively too. So we're excited about that process, and we were excited to be able to turn around that program income, because if you get it in fiscal year 19-20, it also has to be spent during that program year too. So it was a quick turnaround for an excellent effort there. We also, given the pandemic that's going on, we received $700,000 in Cdbg CV funds is what they call it. CV stands for coronavirus, to assist households directly impacted by COVID-19, to help alleviate the crisis that's going on for the families that are experiencing that crisis. So we initially allocated portions of it to Sunnyvale Community Services to be able to assist households to cover rental, the rent as needed. They have to go through an intake process, but the goal of that money is to really keep people housed that were impacted by COVID-19, and also provide support for other basic needs that they may have, whether it's groceries or anything they sit down and talk to the case managers about that we can help them with. So we actually got a lot more funds last year that we were able to utilize, for fiscal year 19-20 in a productive way. And we will be seeing more Cdbg CV money coming in. So we'll be able to talk about that as a group at another time. It's important to note that the CAPER, as it is now, is a draft document. So this meeting tonight and the feedback we get from the public will help us finalize this document. So with that said, I wanted to just go ahead and summarize the staff report, but also open it up for discussion and questions to the group. So thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, do we have questions, comments from commissioners? No comments?
Just out of curiosity, Leaf.
Okay, Commissioner Gilbert.
Sorry, I used the raise hand. I thought you saw that. My question was with regard to the new CV funds. Are those addressed in this CAPER? Are they reported on in the CAPER, or are they outside of that?
They're not reported on in this. We essentially had to do an amendment to the program year 19 plan, but so much has been, we didn't time it with this draft. So it's not incorporated in there, but we will continue to report on it separately, and we'll have more opportunities to spend those funds. I think the CV funds are referenced in there, but not in great detail, like some of the other projects. But the funding that came in was referenced in a dollar amount, I believe.
Yeah, and if I can just chime in real quick, one thing that was a little bit unique about those funds is that even though they came to us in the 19-20 fiscal year, HUD is actually asking us to classify them as 2021 funds. So they'll be reported on at the next fiscal year, even though they did come in during this fiscal year.
Yeah, and in our introduction in the caper, we do mention the CDBG CV funds and that we've received an allocation to that. But as Jenny mentioned, we'll go into more detail with some of our next annual report.
I have a comment if nobody else is there. So given that we're moving this to 2021, then does it really make sense to include in this reporting?
That's a great question. So the way HUD, they allocated these funds during fiscal year 1920, and we wanted to get the funds out quickly. So since we were still in program year 1920, we did an amendment to that plan. That was the quickest way for us to spend the money. So what we'll have to do actually for another round of those funds from the first allocation is do another amendment to the program year 19 plan. So they said, with this first round of funds, if you did an amendment to your program year 19 plan, even though it was so close to the end of the year, that's how you have to continue to spend that allocation, is through an amendment to this plan actually, instead of rolling it into program year 2020, which we could have waited to do that, but we wanted to get the money out as quickly as possible. So as soon as we learned of getting the funds, I can't recall the exact date, we amended our program year 19 plan, and that kind of stuck those funds within this year. And that's why there's not as much detail in the plan besides the allocation that we got, because we were still kind of building the plan as we were going, I guess you could say. And we've had a lot of trainings with HUD and the other jurisdictions on that. So a lot of the other cities too just amended their program year 19 plan instead of waiting to add it to their next program year 20 plan, which many haven't been approved by HUD yet. I don't know if that confuses it more or if that makes sense.
Sure. I mean, just for following the process that we've been following, right? So we haven't really seen how the funding was allocated, at least. I don't know if that discussion happened or public.
I see. Yeah, they did a condensed public noticing process. So HUD provided some waivers. So this was during the time when the commission meetings weren't happening yet. So what happened was we did the amendment, we did the public noticing process. City council was able to see it, but it didn't go through the normal commission then city council process. So as soon as we learned of the funds, even though these meetings were on pause, we wanted to figure out a way to get them out. So it was do the amendment, do the public notice, which is usually 30 days. They condensed it to 5 days. And then it went straight to city council.
So then is there does it make sense to bring some of that back into this forum? I mean, ideally it would have been better if we had done it before this evaluation, right? Or is there a plan in place to do that? At least to cover that portion that's not reviewed anywhere else, at least.
Yeah, so talking about the CDBG CV funds, out of the 700,000 we received, which we started spending, we allocated 350,000 of it. What we're going to have to do is do another amendment to the program year 19 plan, and that will go through the regular process, and that's going to happen later this year. And then I think in the staff report for that, I can maybe clear up some of the background of everything and the sequence of events. So there, if that answers your question, the commission will absolutely have a say now that we're kind of back to our routine in spending those CDBG CV funds. The rest of the first allocation, which we still have about 350,000, then we got another allocation of about $1 million, which is going to roll into program year 20.
Yeah, I mean, I understand the situation we were in. I'm just looking more than the commission, just the public disclosure perspective. It'll be great to see at least the report on the spending of the current allocated money. And then, of course, like you said, the rest can come through the normal process as we go along. I mean, at least it just seems like complete black box, right? So
yeah,
just
yeah,
money
so,
came, money spent, and we have at least public, when I say we as in public, right? I don't know how much visibility is there.
Yeah, so we can make sure to detail the expenditures of the initial allotment and make sure that it's very clear and transparent how that was spent.
Chair, I believe Commissioner Stetson is asking to speak.
Oh, okay. No, I'm seeing Commissioner Gilbert's hand. I'm seeing. But we
Yeah,
can,
Commissioner Stetson has just been
okay.
putting her
So
hand.
we'll do Commissioner Stetson first, and then we'll come to.
So, then you got $700,000 of CV funds from HUD,
Mhm.
and you spent approximately 350,000, or parceled out about 350,000 in 5 days. That was pretty impressive. Well, I know, but mostly to housing and also to services that are complementary to housing in order for people to be able to exist well or exist fine. So you do not have to, my question was, and it's a rollover, so we get the other $350,000. You don't have to give it back to HUD. So that's great, because I know for county things, for the state, if you don't spend it, you lose it. So that's great that you can keep it. And I know that you'll be able to outline exactly what you've spent this money for. So I'll be looking forward to hearing about that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because they call it timeliness. So usually you have to spend it within that year. Given the pandemic and all the uncertainties, they're giving us some more flexibility on the time frame to spend those funds. Our initial thought was, man, people are in trouble now. We got to get those funds out. So Sunnyvale Community Services is still in the process of spending that $350,000, and they have to submit reports to us. So it's already started to get out. And they'll be sending a detailed report soon on the amount of households served. And, you know, they kind of indicated up front how many people they planned on serving through this, but they'll follow up with the actual data too.
That's great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Gilbert, followed by Commissioner White.
I dropped my hand so the other commissioners could go first.
Okay.
I'll come back.
All right, Commissioner White.
Yeah, hi. So what does it take for you to spend the money? Is it someone responding to an RFP, or what is it? I mean, why wasn't the other 350,000 allocated? But am I missing something?
No, that's a good question. So our thought initially was, let's get some of the money out the door. We know an immediate need is going to be rental assistance, but
Right.
let's hang on to some of it to see if other needs start to come up, and do a further assessment. And when it comes to allocating the funds, there's several ways you can do this. So one is our typical RFP process, which we commit to that for our regular entitlement grant each year. This time, given the circumstances, we did a solicitation, is what they call it. So we went to a service provider that we knew could provide the specific service that we need and asked them to apply for these funds. We typically don't do it that way because we want to let everyone know that this money is available. We want as many people to apply. But in this case, we knew we needed the money for rental assistance and supportive services and basic needs. And we knew we had a strong partner that could facilitate that for us. So we went directly to them and asked them to submit an application. Then we did a smaller public noticing process. We just usually put the notification in the Sunnyvale Sun and what the amendment looks like. So a description of the program, if that answers your questions. And we're still, looking at how we're going to use the balance of that 350,000. We are thinking rental assistance is still a high need, but we could have that discussion as a group as we move toward the end of the year and make a recommendation on that.
Yeah, and if I can add in also, Leaf, one thing that also came from the pandemic is that the city actually awarded Sunnyvale Community Services a grant, an emergency grant. Back when the pandemic first began, it was, early March or mid-March. And it wasn't housing funds, it was general fund dollars. And the purpose of that grant was for rental assistance, was for grocery assistance, utilities, things like that, when most people were completely out of work, when everything was shut down. Then we heard that we were going to be getting these new Cdbg funds. And at that point, the information behind them was really vague. We weren't fully sure yet what they could be used for. So what we did is we kind of took it slow, and we saw Sunnyvale Community Services perform really well with their grant and get that money out quickly. So then we felt comfortable giving them the first chunk of funds. Like Leaf said, we were able to solicit them rather than going out to an RFP to continue that program because the first grant was used so quickly. So we knew that we needed to keep filling this and keep supporting our residents. So that's kind of how the program started, and it was not a federal funded program. It was an emergency grant that we saw succeed and keep succeeding. So that's why we were able to fund that so quickly.
Well, I think part of the reason I'm asking is in terms of emergency grants, it's a lot of people that are not associated with community services that have emergencies that live in Sunnyvale. So that means that they wouldn't have access to any help, right?
The program was open to anybody financially impacted by coronavirus. So even if you aren't a regular client of Sunnyvale Community Services, anybody could have called or emailed or gone to their, well, not gone to their office, they were closed, but they could have reached out to them and let them know their situation. And they would have, I believe they had a waiting list because the demand was so high already. So they would be added to the waiting list. So anybody in Sunnyvale who was financially impacted from the pandemic could have qualified for the funds and can still qualify for the funds.
Well, I know that there are some people that don't want it to be made public that that they need help. So if there's like a list and they have to be part of community, services association, then I guess they're not eligible, right? I mean, they have to go public.
All the information is confidential that Sunnyvale Community Services obtains, and all their clientele is completely confidential. So there's no public waiting list. There's no public list of names who've been affected or assisted. It's all confidential through Sunnyvale Community Services and the client.
Okay, so it doesn't become known to anybody else that works for the city or anything?
No, all the city sees on our end, which Leaf receives on a quarterly basis, is the number of clients served and some other potential information about them, maybe their ethnicity or their income levels or certain things per HUD requirements, but not any personal obvious information.
Okay, great. Thank you. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Yeah, HUD typically asks us to report on kind of income levels and then demographics. So they have some pretty basic reporting guidelines that don't get intrusive on people's personal information.
Okay.
I have a question followed by Commissioner Lowe next. And the question I had was a follow-up to, so yeah, I mean, really appreciate the Sunnyvale Community Center. They always come through for our city, right? So that's great. Like Commissioner White was mentioning, maybe there's a group of people who may not even be aware that this is available. I'm thinking probably we should do a little bit more community outreach and publicize that at least the remaining portion of the money is advertised for a wider audience. Is there a forum for that? Or if there's a public service announcement that's going on, I personally would like to see so that I can send it out to, whatever forum that I participate in, so that it gets to more people. Just not knowing, at least feel like we can help out there.
Yeah, so in terms of service providers that could help us spend. So yeah, we understand, and we, especially the last year, we need to grow kind of our network of community-based organizations that are looking into working with us on our Cdbg and home funds. So next month we start our kind of priority review. We'll get into our next RFP cycle. We'll have this next round of Cdbg CV funds. And I personally have been talking to a variety of organizations that have come to us over the last year or so that are interested in working with us. So we should see more organizations come to the table. And really my goal, and I think the whole team's goal, is to get more agencies applying for our Cdbg and home funds and supporting the Sunnyvale community. Sunnyvale Community Services does an excellent job, but we also want to see other folks and organizations come to the table. Project We Hope was one that sticks out to me, a conversation I recently had, and they do a lot of work around homeless services. And I'm hoping they're at the meeting to speak to their services next month and look at our RFP that's going to go out early next year. So I'm definitely on the same page with that.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Lowe, followed by Commissioner Sept.
Yeah, so I have a few questions, but it all ladders up to the same thing. first part is, how long did the application timeframe last? The initial timeframe for the application submission? Because you mentioned there's a waiting list as well. Also, once the program is set into motion, what's the approval rate of the programs that are set up currently? And what would happen if that 350,000 that has been already allocated is exceeded? Or is there a scenario where that would be exceeded?
Okay, I can answer the last question, then I'll have to get a reminder on the first two. My memory is not that good. So they won't, yeah, no worries. They won't be, so they're in close communication with us, and anytime there's, Sunnyvale Community Services has worked with us historically, and know that we cannot reimburse them for more than what the contract states. So we are in contract with them for $350,000, that initial allocation. We will not pay any more than that. So agencies, whether it's Sunnyvale Community Services or any other community-based organization, are very careful with the Cdbg funds, because we won't be able to reimburse them in excess of the contract amount, or for, they submit a lot of source documentation for some of their expenses. So for ineligible activities too. So I have to review some of all of what they submit. So we keep a close eye on that in terms of never going over budget. If they foresee that, they have a discussion with us pretty quickly on that.
Okay, that makes sense.
And then I know there was a question about the application process.
Yeah, so my question was the time frame for applications. So I know you mentioned there's currently a wait list, but what was their initial time frame for people to submit applications before getting placed on the wait list? And once the program is set up, if you could provide us with an approval rate for applicants to approve.
Yes, some of those I don't know the exact details too, but I know when the pandemic started and we initially allocated the general funds, Sunnyvale Community Services has a large, client roster. So I don't think it took long initially for somebody who wanted to apply. And really, when you apply for these funds, there's basic eligibility criteria, which is for Cdbg funds. If we're talking about those, you have to be low income, so 80% or below the median income. So we want to make our programs as flexible and low barrier as possible. But if we're talking about the Cdbg CV funds, you have to demonstrate that you were impacted by COVID-19 in a certain way, which could be a letter from an employer or a self-certification even, because these are new times. Nobody's done this before. So once you apply, we want to make it low barrier. You're just going to have to demonstrate you've been impacted by COVID-19 and that you are eligible for Cdbg funds. I would have to check in with Sunnyvale Community Services on, their waiting list and how long it's taking folks to get those funds. They haven't yet told us there's been a backlog. So I would have to do a little bit more investigating on that first question. Okay. I don't have the exact details on that piece.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't fully answer that.
Oh, no, it's fine. It's fine.
We don't typically hear about the day-to-day to a lot of these programs once they're funded and their contracts have been awarded. Like I mentioned, they report to us quarterly on the progress that's being made. So we normally only hear from them if there's a problem or if something really great happened. So status quo is normally a good sign. It's normally quiet. And then every quarter we get to see how much progress they've made or how much money they've actually spent. So since all of this is very new, I don't know if we've received any reimbursements from them quite yet, but we don't actually oversee their applications or know about the timeline or the process. So it's very much in their court.
Okay, thank you.
Am I speaking?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. So for the 350, you said quarterly that are the money that was allocated quarterly, the entities that received it provide feedback. Is that something that will come to commission? Will we have a brief presentation of what the people that organization that we granted it to, how it was used, high level, and what is the continuing need, anything like that to give the commissioners, like, you know, feedback on that.
Yeah, if the commission would like a report out, and I think it would be important on the CDBG CV funds and the expenditures, typically when we talk about the quarterly reports, that's how we reimburse the agency. So they submit a quarterly reimbursement request with the outcomes of the program and then some narratives. Are there any challenges of the program, any successes? We usually don't share that with the commission on an ongoing basis. It's just, but we have that information. And with the pandemic now and COVID-19, and we know these funds are allocated, you know, I'm sure there's a forum and a way that we can make sure that we're sharing those outcomes on whatever projects, you know, the commission would like to see. So we do have that information available. For the 350,000, we're still waiting on their first reimbursement request and report to come in. But typically, that's all the stuff I want to keep in a file to make sure that we're spending those money on eligible uses, we're meeting our outcomes, and I use to reimburse them because all the HUD funds are for reimbursed expenses. They tell us what they spent, we reimburse them. So those are the reports, and some of those are reflected in the CAPER, but we can get into more detail on the COVID-19 one specifically too, if that answers your question.
Okay, and the other thing is for the the next 350, what is the when will the applications for those like start being accepted, and outreach for organizations that typically the city would grant to high level? What is the time frame for that?
My hope is that we can start this process in November. So we have some time, but Jenny and I are actually working on a timeline and kind of recommendations for that last portion, second half of the first tranche of the CDBG CV funds. The challenge so we want to get that money out. I'm hoping we can have a recommendation discussion with commission on that, you know, not next month, but November.
Okay, and then will staff provide like a list of priorities and ranked priorities? And then I think previously you provided like a list of priorities, and then the commissioners got to look at how you weighted each of the priorities, and then that's how what you used to select the grantees. So if for the next 350, if a review of that could also be presented, that would be helpful.
Yeah, and then we'll also have our general priority needs discussion in October too for our regular kind of entitlement grant, which is a little bit separate from the CDBG CV funds. So we'll be talking a lot about priorities the next few months. Okay,
and then is there any way that any entities, like I know for some other funds, there were corporations that matched. Would there ever be any like entities outside of Sunnyvale that might match these these funds that we allocate?
Technically, so we were just using our TBR program as an example. We work with Abode Services, who serves a bigger region than just Santa Clara County. But, you know, so anybody's welcome to apply to our RFP processes. Some things that we would consider during the applications and recommendations would be kind of your experience, you know, working with what you're proposing. Is it a priority need? And do you have experience within, you know, Santa Clara County or the city of Sunnyvale administering those types of services, if that answers your question.
And just to clarify, the organization can be based outside of Sunnyvale, but they need to serve Sunnyvale residents. That's really the primary factor that we're looking for. They can be located in Los Angeles as long as they serve Sunnyvale residents.
Yeah,
Yes.
I think for some other, when you were evaluating some other organizations, you look to see if they received matching funds. and then that would prioritize them higher to get the Sunnyvale funds, because it looked like, you know, that they, that giving them the funds would make it go further, the Sunnyvale funds. That's what I meant.
Yeah, and that is for CDBG programs a requirement that there's at least a 25% match to the amount of funds that we're giving to you. Yeah, and that match can come in different forms. It could be cash, it could be staff time services. So there's actually for CDBG funds a requirement that we see some sort of match to what we're giving you coming in.
Okay.
And they detail that in the application, and then we embed that in the contracts too.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Gilbert.
So I had some questions on the content in the CAPER. In Table 1, it makes reference to the TBRA funds, but it shows no actual outcomes in the current program year. I know you're providing TBRA funds, so is this item different?
No, and this brings up a good point. So if we go to page 5, I had trouble formatting with this. So I want to correct this before we submit this to HUD, but there's part of it that's cut off. So to answer your TBR question specifically, is that program wasn't incorporated into our, what we call ITIS. It's our disbursement system and reporting system. It's web-based that we use for HUD. So this wasn't a 1920 activity. This was actually created in like a couple of fiscal years ago. So we've been spending this money for a while. So that's why nothing's reflected in 1920, but it's reflected in the 5-year portion of it. So
okay.
They get rolled into there. We actually currently have 20 households enrolled in our TBR program. That was kind of, I had to go look into that, and I've been working with HUD on this table. And I want to go through some of the other ones with the group now, and I'm glad you brought that up. So, and yeah. I'm going to fix this before it's submitted to HUD too. So we have rental units rehabbed, and you'll see 100 for outcome and second program year. That also has a 0 there right now. The reason is that's a window replacement project, and that was delayed due to COVID. So that won't populate until that activity is completed, which it's not completed yet, but we have so far for that project, the last reimbursement request or report we received, they have 70 of those windows done. So we're 70% of the way there. Once we finish that project, hopefully in a month and a half, then I can complete that activity in the disbursement system, and it'll be reflected in these goals. But probably I'm speaking to our HUD rep after we even submit the CAPER. So they'll just ask us the same question that we're going through now. Why is there
so this just reflects through June 30th, and anything you've done since will reflect what in a subsequent report?
Yeah, so there's the 5-year strategic, so that'll show everything we've done since program year 15. Then we have the 1 year, or the outcome expected program year, that's this year, 1920. So that 100 is a project that was created for program year 1920, rehabbing some rental units, which is replacing some windows. We have 100 units that were going to be replaced, and that project just isn't completed yet. So it was delayed due to COVID. So we have 70 of those windows that are replaced at this point in time. So I can't.
Right. So this year's CAPER reflects what happened through June 30th, but we're still doing things under this program. Next year, will we have another CAPER for the 2015 to 20 CAPER? Since now I guess we're about to start a new one, 20 through 25.
Yeah, so next year's CAPER will actually reflect the one that we submitted to HUD recently, which would be our 2020 to 2025 consolidated plan in draft form. We worked on that in partnership with the county and other cities, and that also aligned with the time where everything kind of went haywire and these meetings stopped. So city council was able to review, it went up for public review, and then we submitted it to HUD because we have a deadline to do that. by August 16th. The new con plan 2020 to 2025 has the same priorities and goals as the previous one. We still have a lot of work to do on those goals. So what you're going to see is, the next CAPER will reflect the new con plan 2020 to 2025 and start with program year 20.
Okay, so I guess this kind of piggybacks on the earlier conversation. For activities like this that took place while we were kind of on hiatus due to COVID, is there a way to work into the agenda some kind of even informational reporting to bring us up to speed on what went out, since the comp plan obviously is something we monitor and we weren't really involved in that process? It would be good just to be educated on what went through.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, we can absolutely
Okay.
bring the commission a summary, if you will, of the summer events that went forward to council without the commission. We can put together a little item, like a memo or an informational item for the next meeting.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
And then, so just a couple of other questions within the CAPER. There's a row in here under other community development efforts that just is other, that had a planned goal and has no outcomes. What is that?
Yeah, so that's
obviously it didn't happen, whatever it was.
That's an interesting one too, because it has 0, but our actual on that was 585, I believe. So that's our human services grants. So when program,
you have 585 on the row 2 rows up. Is it just reporting in a different place?
Are we looking at the same table?
Yeah, the other community development efforts. So Edith emailed us the table so we can see the right-hand side.
Got it.
Okay. But so the first row in that goal 3 has the 585 reporting under actual, but a 0 expected. And then this other row has the expected, but no outcomes. So are they just misaligned? Maybe you just need to review that before this is finalized.
Yeah, so I do. Yeah, so the outcome for program year expected, that's our human services. I don't know why there's a 0 there. There should be some sort of goal, because each program year we allocate our human services grants and there is some sort of expectation. So, and we've done good with those goals generally over 5 years. So I think that's something that I have to look at a little bit deeper, but the 585 represents all the clients that we served in 1920 through our human services allocation.
Okay.
And then the 1900 with the 0 is our curb ramps. And we did not do any curb ramps this year. So the assumption when we do a certain amount of curb ramps is there'll be a certain amount of pedestrian traffic and this is who it will benefit. Right. We did not do the curb ramp project in 1920 and we rolled those funds over. So we plan on spending them this year. So that just looks like a giant expected outcome with 0 actual outcomes.
Yeah.
Which I guess in a way it is. We just didn't move forward with the curb ramp project this year.
And that would be reflected in next year's CAPER.
Yeah.
Okay. And then on page 24 of the CAPER, at the bottom of the first paragraph, it talks about that the preparation of the AFH was delayed due to coronavirus, but we're reviewing it and we plan to have it complete during the first quarter, which is over in a week. So is it really appropriate to report it as plans to have it complete within the next week, or will it be more the second quarter?
Yeah, I should have been more clear. We could be more clear. I meant the calendar year of 2021. To get that,
calendar 2021. Okay.
So I can make that more clear, because it's another report that we do, and we do it in partnership with other entitlement jurisdictions and the county, which is our fair housing plan. So Jenny and I are actually reviewing the draft of that now, and that's another one that will go through the commission and through council. So
right.
we're working with the consultants now on the localized Sunnyvale plan, and we'll keep the commission updated on that. That's going to be kind of a lengthy document, and it's an important one too.
Yep. Okay, I just have one other little thing I wanted to point out on page 15. Toward the bottom, there's a paragraph that talks, the FY 2019-20 action plan did not include a home loan. 2A, that would add, I don't know what you meant to say there, but you might want to clear that up.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that. I will. It's a little embarrassing, but I thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm done. Thanks.
Appreciate that.
Commissioner Sell, you have a question?
That was left over.
Oh, okay. All right. Just following up on Commissioner Gilbert, I have a question around page 28, I think. Yeah, on page 28, there's a specific call out for the money spent for TBRA. And in the attachment that we got from Edith and the final one, again, I didn't actually know how to read it.
Yeah, so home program income is what we receive on loans that we've given out. So when someone we lend money pays us back, that's the program income, similar to Cdbg. But I think I have to adjust the $525,000 number down a little bit for the TBRA program. So that just shows how much home program income came in, and then during the program year, kind of how much home dollars went out for the tenant-based rental assistance program. But just looking at it, I think I need to adjust that down a little bit.
No, I get that. I understand the income and spend. I was trying to understand this line with the attachment we got from Edith. Right? There's this single page attachment that's showing you in the TBRA program there. It's, again, the outcome for expected year is all blank there. And we are showing that we spent $525,000, right? So is that just missing data in there? Or?
Is this going back to the table?
Yeah.
With the outcomes?
Yes.
It's not missing. It's rolled into the 5-year because this activity was created for another program year. So if you look before it in the outcome expected strategic plan, that's like over the course of 5 years. The number for this current year is going to be rolled into that one. I looked at that for a while and was trying to figure that out too. But we didn't create an activity in ITIS, the disbursement system, for 1920 for TBRA. So those numbers are going to be in that 41, which is, so you'll see the actual strategic plan percentage is pretty high for the TBRA program. Then the annual one is low, but it's rolled into that 41 there.
41.
So
that 348.
Yeah, if you look at tenant-based rental assistance on a table on page 5, the outcome expected for the total strategic plan was 25 households. We served 41. We just don't have it reflected in the actual for this program year because it wasn't an activity for this program year.
It's tricky because we actually can't control those tables. It's all through the software that we use. So when the table says something that's a little confusing, we try and clarify it in either a sentence later on or in the 5-year outlook, because we can't go in and change the table. So it's a little tricky. So we appreciate you guys working with us through it.
Yeah. So going back to my earlier question, right? So that $525,000 that was spent, where does that get accounted, and how would one go find out which year it was spent, right? So because if I just look at this, nothing has been spent, but in the details we have a $525K that was spent, but it's attached to a different year.
Yeah, so we can run a million different reports through this disbursement system. So we can run a home activity report for all of our expenditures, and then it'll break down by year how much we actually spent on that program. Even if it was a project that was created in 2018, it'll tell us exactly how much we spent during each fiscal year. So we can run those for the CDBG program and the home program. So it's like a project activity report, and it'll give us kind of a detailed outlook. And that's how HUD essentially keeps track of us as well. So that's a report that we don't usually have in the CAPER, but we have access to through the disbursement system that we use.
So again, it makes sense, this being an annual review in the annual cycle, it's not there. So then is there a way we can get the consolidated view for the 5 years at the end of that 5-year plan? Is there something we get to see, something that's spanning across? I don't remember in the last couple of years seeing for the previous cycles, just trying to see, get a look back view, right? So, okay, this is actually what happened, because each year we're looking at a slice and we don't have a little bit of more insight into what happened.
Yeah, the CAPER's a little more broad. So it'll tell you kind of the outcomes and then the actual, so just the 5-year, this is how many people you said you would serve, this is how many people you did. But I don't see an issue with sharing a report, you know, if somebody wants to see it on kind of the history of the home program. It goes all the way back to the 90s in our expenditures each year for each program, essentially. That's usually not in the CAPER. The CAPER is more of kind of a high level broad document, but we do have access to those reports and that level of detail. And I don't see why we couldn't share one of those reports. I mean, it would go down to like the dollar and our admin costs and a lot of detail.
Yeah, so again, I'm coming more from, again, when we get the request for grants and how it is being spent and how people are allocated, just getting a good view of that helps us make better decisions when we are reviewing the requests that are coming in, and gives us a sense of which area we were able to impact the most, or in a given year when we see there is a need in a certain category, have we done enough in the past? Or it just, again, given the nature of how we are only current. And at that point in time, typically I find myself loss of information, and then we try to do the best we can with the data we have. I'm just thinking it might help us a little bit more better being informed on the decision making that may be in front of us.
Yeah. I feel like
I recall earlier the commission requested some more data when it came to our annual entitlement process again, and we're happy to provide that. Next month, like Leif mentioned, is our priority needs assessment workshop, where we hear from the community on what the critical needs are. We can provide you some data on what types of programs we've funded in the past 5 or 10 years. You can see a snapshot. And then in the spring, when the commission actually looks at the RFP and the applications and decides on final funding, we can show data on those specific grantees and if they've received funding in the past. So we're more than welcome to kind of beef up the data for the upcoming cycle of grant funding this year.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, a lot of the information on the table, especially going into a new con plan cycle, I'm going to be very careful on how we populate this data on the table, and then just make sure, historically, some projects might have not been completed or, you know, designated that way in a database, and it kind of messes up the data a little bit, and that's something we can correct moving into the next con plan cycle.
We have Commissioner Lowe as a question next.
Yeah, hey, I just have a quick question for clarification. I see I'm not sure if anyone asked this earlier. I see the TBRA goal listed twice on the CAPER. I see it once in affordable housing and again in alleviation of homelessness, where we had a outcome expected of 25 for each and actual for 41 of each. Was that intentional for it to be listed twice, or is it 2 different goals?
I think so this goes back to who ever initially populated the outcomes with this last con plan. So my guess is that they considered TBRA covered more than one goal, and which could be affordable housing and alleviation of homelessness. because the program could serve somebody who's housed and just needs some temporary assistance. And then our program also serves people straight from the North County shelter too, or who are homeless. So that's my guess, is it's one program that covered two goals in the eye of whoever initially populated the outcomes and ITIS with the programs.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Let's see if we have any. All right. Do we have any member of the public wishing to speak?
Well, we do have some folks, and if they wish to speak, I would ask them to go ahead and use the raise your hand function so we can acknowledge them.
Okay, looks like we may not have any.
Okay, then
All right.
we can open and close
I
that.
guess that brings us to, do we need additional discussions, or do we have a motion to consider? Open up for anyone? Let's see, Commissioner Gilbert.
So I'm just going to the action requested. So I move that the commission follows alternative 1 to approve the draft CAPER as presented in attachment 1 to the report.
Any other comments, or do I have a second? All right, Commissioner Stetson, you are on mute.
Yeah, yes, I second Diana's motion.
Okay. Can we do a voice call, please?
Thank you. Commissioner Gilbert,
Aye.
Vice Chair Stetson,
Aye.
Commissioner White,
Aye.
Commissioner Sell,
Yes.
Commissioner Lowe,
Yes.
and Chair Hiremouth.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's go to my agenda packet here. Okay. All right. We are next on to item 0848, annual review of the City Code of Ethics and Conduct. Staff, we have a report.
Sorry, it's frozen. No staff report on this item. This is just the annual review of the ethics and conduct code. I do not believe there were any changes this year or any substantial changes. So it's really just a chance for the commission to review and to provide any feedback on this item.
Okay. Any comments? I try to scan through and see if I can spot changes, or just have one request. Yeah, if we get this report and if additionally we have changes, then I'm assuming it will be called out on what the changes would be. Yeah, I was just scanning through and it kind of looked familiar. I'd admit I wasn't expecting too many changes there. So I just looked through it, but just thought, how would I know if something changed? That's just an ask. Otherwise, I have nothing else.
Yes, definitely. If there's ever significant changes, we would highlight those to the commission before making you review it.
All right. If there's no discussion, do we have any comments from the public? Okay, don't see any raised hands. Okay, I guess we can move on to making a motion. Any?
No motion needed on this one. It's just simply a review and provide any feedback.
Okay, should we just consider just done? That's it?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right, that's end of that item. All right, moving on to standing items. We do have item 0847 for commission study issues for calendar year 2021.
No staff report here. Just a reminder, we don't have any study issues for the year yet. Next month is the last meeting to have your study issue paper submitted to me. You remember the study issue process is fairly new now, where you can submit the study issue request form at any time. You can either email it simply to Edith or myself, and from there we would bring it back to the commission. Next month is the last chance for us to prepare. So next month's meeting date would be the last chance for us to then take those papers back, prepare the white papers as we used to call them, and then bring them back to the commission in November before the city manager takes his review with them. So just a heads up that if you have any ideas for study issues, make sure to get them over to me. Edith can send out the form if you don't have any access, but it is on the city's webpage also under study issues. So just one reminder that you basically have one more month until we have ample time to make sure everyone has their study issue papers in, if there's any this year.
Commissioner Gilbert?
I just had a question about past submissions that were made that may have been deferred or maybe not prioritized by the council. Is there a list of what's still active that would then go through the ranking process next year, or are they all dead at this point?
I think we might have had one that was deferred. I can't recall if it was the second year of it. I'd have to go back and look, but typically once the commission recommends any 2020, actually 2021 study issues at this point, it comes back, I believe, in January. And at that point, it comes back with all of the deferred or below the line study issues that are still active. Sorry, I can't remember off the top of my head if there's any.
I think we had
active
one,
ones.
I believe, and I think the commission or the council did not go through because of it required changes to our charter. I think it was from Commissioner Grossman that we didn't.
Right,
That's
I do
the only
remember
one that I
that.
recall.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was deferred or if that was just below the line. We can look into it, and I can have an update for you guys by the next meeting date.
Commissioner Stetson?
My understanding, Jenny, was that it was killed.
Okay.
I think it was deferred.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It was regarding worked, I guess, like an internship or a journeyman's program for people that lived within Sunnyvale that could be within the trades, and you'd hire people within the trades that lived in Sunnyvale, which would be extremely difficult to do.
Right, that's right. That was the additional one. I do recall that one not being recommended. And I think the one that might still be alive is the one Chair Harrimath mentioned about the change to the city code to focus more on human services. So I'll double check on both of those for you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sept? You are on mute, maybe?
Is there a listing of previous study issues that successfully made it through the process, just so we can understand ideas the type of ideas that have been successful?
Yes, on the city's website under the study issue page, there should be a really comprehensive overview of the current study issues, the status of them, and I believe they have a history component to it. I don't know how far back it goes, but there should be a pretty good overview there. I don't know if it'll say on there if it was a study issue that came out of the Housing Commission, or if it is just one that is assigned to community development, which could have been either Planning Commission, Heritage, or the Housing Commission. So it might be a little hard to tell where it originated, but there should be a pretty good history of study issues on the website. And we can share that link with the group too, if you're unable to find it.
All right, any other discussions, comments? Okay, I guess that closes the topic. I don't think we have any motions or anything at this point. Next item is non-agenda items. Commissioners, any comments? Staff?
Couple of comments. Your next meeting for October is unique. It's on a Thursday, so make sure and mark your calendars not to log on a Wednesday. That will be our priority needs hearing. So we do plan on a significant amount of public comment or attendees during that meeting. So plan on a little bit of a longer meeting. We'll hear from the community on how they want to, how we should prioritize our funding for the next 2 years. So that's normally the meeting where we get to sit in the council chambers together, but unfortunately it'll be virtual this year. We do plan to have a November meeting, and I believe we will have a December meeting. So make sure and plan your calendar out through the rest of the calendar year. I also want to remind the group that the Housing Commission or the Housing Strategy is going to the City Council on October 13th. Make sure that any other interest groups that you're working with are aware of the report and that they're aware that there's ability to still comment on the document. Staff has been working with a lot of other nonprofits and community groups on this. So we look forward to bringing that to council along with the recommendations from the commission. So that's all I have for tonight.
I actually have something real quick regarding the November and December meetings, and be on the lookout for a doodle from me. I'm going to make you guys experts at doodle because we will not be able to do our regular, we never do our regular fourth Wednesday because they're very close to the holidays. And so then that would actually encroach on other commissions that already meet here. So I will probably be asking you to choose either a second or a fourth Thursday again. But just so you have a heads up, I didn't want to do it too close to this one because we still have a little time. Okay, thank you.
Just a comment on October 13th housing strategy presentation to the council. Do one of us need to attend that meeting, or I forget?
No, you don't need to. The staff report will go out the Thursday before the meeting, and the way the staff report works is the front page is focused primarily on the outcome of the Housing Commission's recommendations. So it highlights all of your recommendations, and it attaches the minutes so the council can see the comments and the conversation that went that was surrounding the housing strategy. So there's no reason to attend unless you'd like to attend on your own behalf. Just make that very clear if you do speak at the meeting.
Okay. We have Commissioner Sell followed by Gilbert. Comments?
For the previous federal relief funding that was allocated, what agency in Sunnyvale was able to work with our Congress members to see what part of the funds might help Sunnyvale residents? Is that,
Do you mean, are you talking
like the
specifically
CARES
to the
Act or something like that?
coronavirus pandemic?
Yeah.
So I think Leaf kind of touched on this a little bit previously, but the way we went about spending those funds was kind of stemmed off of the city issuing that emergency grant. So we didn't actually do a full RFP. However, we do plan to receive approximately another $1 million in those funds, which will go through as the normal Housing Commission and council outreach process with a full RFP. So that'll be coming to you in the next 6 months or so. But the previous one was, we just have to move really quickly. So hopefully that answered your question.
Okay, and how would the general public get insight to, Sunnyvale got this amount of block funding from the federal government to help with COVID relief and evictions and whatever, and this is how Sunnyvale allocated it, so that it shows that transparency and all of that, and also all the good uses of that money.
Sure. So with the original batch of funding we had, as well as the grant that the city offered, we did a lot of email outreach. you've probably seen on our website now, we have a whole page dedicated to pandemic related items. So a lot of the updates were posted there. We also, we work a lot with social media. We have a communications team who pushes out all of our really important items. So as we work with Sunnyvale Community Services on getting up to speed with their new rental assistance program with these funds, we'll have outreach done through not only our side, but through Sunnyvale Community Services side too. So for the next round, it will be much more transparent because we do plan to open it up to any nonprofit who would qualify for this program. But in terms of when the city, the time between when the city receives funding and when the city issues an RFP, there's not any notice really until the RFP is released. And at that point, it's in the newspaper, it's through our constant contact, our interested parties list. It's through us reaching out to all of our nonprofits who we typically partner with, and it's also posted on our website. So there is a lot of outreach that occurs once that RFP is published. And as Leif mentioned, we're really trying to increase that this year.
Thank you.
Gilbert?
I just wanted to comment and share to any of the commission members on the recommendations that we included with the housing strategy for modifications, that the council only sees what's in our minutes unless they take the time to go back and listen to the recording. So I have found in the past that when we've sent recommendations, sometimes the council doesn't know where we're coming from. And so if there's something in there that you feel passionate about, that's always a good reason to go to council and present your perspective of why you're making the recommendation, because they don't, you can't assume that they're going to understand what's in your head. So, and it's always encouraged, and it creates a opportunity for them to ask more questions if it's important. So that's just something for each commissioner to think about. If there's something there that they want to advocate for, that's your best opportunity to do it.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner Gilbert. Like I mentioned, you're absolutely welcome to. There's no requirement, though, to speak on behalf of the recommendations, but the commission can select a representative, or you can speak on your own behalf at the council meeting.
Okay, looks like with that, if no other, oh, I do see Commissioner Sept.
Would we want to elect a representative from our commission to summarize our recommendations to council, or is that not done? Like verbally, you know, someone
I mean, I've done it before. I've done it before as chair. I've done it before as a commission member. Chair's not available, vice chair. But at the end of the day, it should be whoever came up with the recommendation is going to speak most effectively to why.
Okay, so I just wanted to, I haven't gone through this process before. So there'll be a staff report, and then in part of that staff report, will it highlight the recommendations of the commission, or where would it would just reside in the minutes of the commission, the last meeting? That's the only place that our recommendations would be visible to the council. I just wanted to know where would, I mean, we spent probably 2 hours discussing it. So I just wanted to know, like, where would that be visible for the council?
That's a great question. So actually, the way that it works when a commission recommends something to the city council is we take the staff report that we presented to you, and all we do is we put a cover page on that report that outlines how the commission made their recommendation and what it is. So what we did with this one, actually, we went a little bit deeper and we highlighted each recommendation that the commission made. And underneath it, we actually have a paragraph summarizing staff's response to it. So it's about 2.5 pages. So it goes through all the 5 or so recommendations, and then we have a response for the council to see. So it's the front page of the agenda in addition to the minutes. And then on the 13th, when staff and BAE actually present the item, we will go through the commission recommendation just to clarify in case the council doesn't see the commission's recommendation. So it'll be in 3 different spots.
Okay, thank you.
Question, when would the draft be available?
The agenda would go out the Thursday before, so I'm not exactly sure on the date, but the council meeting is the 13th, so maybe it's like around the 8th or something like that.
6th or 7th, okay.
Yeah, that Thursday it should be live.
We have a question from Commissioner White.
Yeah, hi. Am I muted?
You're good, yeah.
Okay. So I mentioned when on Nextdoor, when I think it was Nextdoor, I'm not sure, maybe it was in a phone call with a number of residents at Plaza del Rey and some of the other parks that the commission recommended. I don't really know if the commission recommended or if it was you, Jenny, was for an MOU. As I think this was you, Jenny. That was, I mean, okay. And
the staff recommendation was for the MOU, correct?
yes. And oh my God, there was a real, I'm sure you might have heard, there was a hell of an uproar about that. So I also wanted to thank Linda, because your recommendations were really thoughtful, and I very much appreciated the way you were thinking and your responses. You're very analytical and thoughtful, and I appreciate it. I just wanted to say that. That isn't why I raised my hand though. So I just think there's going to be a lot of uproar to this MOU. And I mean, it's my first experience going through this. So I found myself, me who was pro rent stabilization, I found myself defending my tribe here. And I don't even know why I was doing that, but I was doing that. And anyway, just commenting. I have nobody to talk to here, so I'm telling you that.
And I will say it's been a little bit quiet on our end for the housing strategy. We really haven't gotten a lot of letters. We've received one more since the commission met. So I strongly advocate for you to all meet with your groups and your other Sunnyvale residents and make it clear that the council is going to consider this item on the 13th, and they should absolutely chime in via email, via public comment during the Zoom meeting. They can send a letter to Edith or myself or straight to the council. So I encourage you all to do that, because like I said, it's been a little quiet and we're a little surprised. And
have you not received anything at all?
Just the letters that the commission has seen, actually. We've only received one email since the commission meeting. So you have all seen the almost every single piece of public comment we've received so far.
Did you receive a letter from Fred?
We did.
You
yes.
did, because I never saw his letter, but he mentioned that he sent it. So I guess he's the only one, right?
He's the one that we've received since the commission.
Yes, okay. So what you're saying is that if people really want rent stabilization, then they need to make it clear in writing.
Yes, or attend the meeting, because the council doesn't, they can't assume what the community is looking for. So we always advocate for involvement.
From the results of the study? I mean, don't they already know that? I mean, does the community have to keep telling them repeatedly? I mean, really?
It's called advocacy.
The data is in the report, but if they disagree with staff's recommendation, or if they agree with staff's recommendation, the council always appreciates hearing that.
I didn't get that people on the council would appreciate hearing that. I mean,
they do. It's a very big, the housing strategy itself is a very large item, and the mobile home park policy is one of the main components of that. So they're not going to make this decision lightly, and they're really looking to hear from the community on their take. So like I said, I highly encourage any public comments, and the earlier the better, so that the council can actually read it and process it. So letters, emails are really great.
Okay. Letters and emails to who?
Either you can send it to myself or Edith, or they can send it directly to the city council's email address.
Okay. So would you mind telling me what your address is again?
Yes, so it would just be it's my first initial J and my last name Carloni
Mhm.
at sunnyvale.ca.gov.
Mhm. All right.
And if you ever forget it, you can always email Edith, and most of you have her email from the agenda she sends out too. So anything that goes to Edith will also come to me.
All right. All right. Okay. It's taken me a while to get all this, but I will eventually.
No problem.
I think we have Commissioner Sell. You are on mute.
Thanks. So Emily mentioned that in the mobile home park community, there was a lot of uproar. So your recommendation is that the residents email as soon as possible so that their input can be processed. Typically, would they just say, I don't support this, or would a more useful comment be, I don't support this and these are the reasons why, and detailed input that is probably more useful? Or what does staff think? You know, when you get comment, what is like really effective comment that you get from the public?
Yeah, good question. You know, I can't speak on behalf of the council or what they think, but I would tend to think that the latter is more important. Give them a little bit of information as to why. Did we miss something? Was there something more critical that we should have thought about? Is there a secret in the mobile home community that we just don't know? So if you put something behind the letter or the recommendation, I think it carries a little further with the council. But again, I can't speak on their behalf. That's just me personally.
Okay, thank you. Any other last comments? Okay, great. I guess that brings us to end of this meeting, and we call the meeting adjourned at 8:30.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You.
Thank you, everyone. I
you.
appreciate it.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.